Hello everybody! In this video I'm gonna crochet in the round with CrochetPARADE.org and show you how to use this website to build a flower. Maybe not as complicated as the one you see here, but well, let's get started. So we're gonna start with 9 chains, okay? And I press Shift Enter, which automatically renders my project. You can also press on Calculate and show model in 3D here if you want to get the same result. Okay, so I'm gonna make the line thicker. Now what I would like to do is attach this stitch to the beginning here with a slip stitch. Now Crochet Parade, if you're doing a swatch, for example, see my previous video tutorial about that, keeps track of where you're attaching stitches when you're doing that sequentially. Here, however, there is nothing sequential about attaching the stitch to the beginning, so we need to be a little bit more careful about how we specify where the slip stitch is going to be attached. So here it is, SS means slip stitch, and I'm going to attach it at the at symbol. Tells you that what follows, or tells the code that what follows is an attachment point. And in square brackets I'm going to specify the coordinates of the attachment points. Now if I type 0, that's the 0th row. If I type 1, that's for the first row. So again, rows are counted in starting from 0. Clearly I don't have a first row here. I can do 0th row because we are at the 0th row, and I want to attach this to the 0th stitch of the 0th row. If I wanted the first stitch after 0, meaning the second stitch, I would type 1. So let's attach it to the 0th stitch of the 0th row, and here it is, it's attached. Now you might wonder, okay, so can I see how the attachment works? Well, I'm going to press Ctrl A to hide stitches and show them. So here it is. We start with 1 chain, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the next one is a slip stitch that attaches to the first stitch right here. Okay, and we're done. We made a loop of chains. Now I don't want to turn the project. Instead, let's continue crocheting in the round. I'm gonna do a single crochet. Now automatically Crochet Parade assumes that you're going to single crochet in, because I didn't write turn here. If I write turn, then it's different, but if there is no turn at the end of the previous line, the next stitch here will attach to the first stitch of the previous row. So I'm going to attach the next single crochet to this chain here. Let's see how it looks like. Bam, there it is. And you can see a single crochet is as wide as it is tall, unlike a slip stitch, which is much narrower. Now I can go around the round if I want. I can do more single crochets, let's say 8 of them, just to see what it looks like. Okay. If I render the project in 3D, you can see that the project is going to start curving a little bit, because as of now there are way too many, there are not enough single crochet stitches to go around the loop. If you want this project to remain flat, you will need to increase the single crochet stitches in the that you're working into the base chain loop. We're going to do that in a minute. So let's increase this to 10 single crochet stitches. There we are, and we ended up with a single crochet in. Let's just increase this a little bit. We ended up with a single crochet right here. Where is this? This is in the slip stitch. And yes, it makes sense, because 9 of these single crochets were worked in the chains, and the last one was worked in the single crochet. All right. Now you might not want to work the last stitch in the single crochet here. Instead, you might want to do 9 single crochets, and then you might want to do a slip stitch in the first of those single crochets. So let's do that. This is row 1, and I want to attach to the 0 stitch. So there it is. And now this looks a little bit like a band, as you can see. Okay. It's a chain that is folding onto itself. Let me increase the thickness here so you can see it better. All right, yeah, this is now better. All right, now what if I want my project to be flat instead of look like a cylinder? Well, again, I want to add more single crochets to the chain loop. Now, in order to do that, I need to tell CrochetPARADE that these single crochets will be worked in the chain space, because there aren't enough stitches to be worked to work the single crochets here. So let's say I want to do 19 single crochets. Well, if I hit enter, the code will do something pretty weird. It's going to just continue going in the round, and it's going to make a tall cylinder here. Okay, because once it finishes with the 10 single crochets in the first row, it just continues round and round and round. So it will start crocheting in the first stitch of the first row and so on. So this is what you want to do in order to put single crochet stitches into this chain space. I'm gonna create a label around my first loop, and to create a label, what you do is you type in dot, and then you write the name of your label. It can be anything really. I'm gonna write, okay, this is a ring. And then what I want to do is I want to tell CrochetPARADE that I would like all of these 19 stitches to attach in the ring. Bam, and there they are. And as you can see, CrochetPARADE automatically interpolates. Okay, so for example, this stitch roughly attaches to the chain space under this chain, and the next stitch attaches in between these two chains. Now you can see here there is a little bit of a misalignment happening where stitches meet. So when you're attaching to a chain space like that, this is honestly mostly cosmetic in terms of how the project is rendered, but you might want to skip, when you're defining the ring here, the ring variable, you might want to skip crocheting into the last into the space right under the last stitch. So you can do modifications to the label, and all of that is documented in the manual. Okay, this is the manual. If you scroll down, you can see all kinds of different ways of attaching stitches, including attachment to a label. So I'll be using these symbols here, skipping border stitches of a group. I'll be using the exclamation marks, and so here it is. I'm going to put an exclamation mark, and let's see how the model changes. Alright, so let's compare the two. This is the original, and without the exclamation mark, this is what it looks like. I'm gonna write something here, don't worry about it. This will make the whole rendering a little bit more consistent between different runs. So again, this is without the exclamation mark. You can see here the first single crochet of the new row is attached or starts at the same point where the last single crochet of that new row was attached. If I put in the exclamation mark, then the first single crochet of the new row is not attached to the same location as the last single crochet of that row. There is a little bit of a gap there. Okay. Again, we can explore this type of label modifications later on in a different video, but it's mostly to help you spread out the stitches a little bit. Okay, and again, please read the manual. Let's see. In 3 dimensions, this is what the project looks like. Now, how do I know that in order for this project to remain flat, how do I know that I put in enough stitches, or are there too many stitches? Well, let's try 30 stitches. Let's see what the 3-dimensional model would look like. You see it starts folding in around the edges because there is too much length at the periphery, so you can't keep a straight circle if you want to fit it at this radius. If you want to do too few stitches, let's say 10 of them, well, you're going to bring in the outer row inwards, and you're going to start turning into a cylinder. So how do you know that you've done enough stitches? Well, you can just play around. Maybe 15 stitches. Okay. And okay, this doesn't look terrible. Maybe I'm going to increase it to 18 stitches. And guys, just beware, this is not exact. Nothing is exact. These models converge to about 10%. So these number of stitches can be plus or minus 2, even if this looks okay. And that also requires you to make single crochets as wide as they're tall. Of course, nobody is perfect, so you might need to do a swatch to ensure that you're doing roughly the same amount of height, same number of stitches per, let's say, 10 centimeters as the number of rows if you're doing single crochet rows per 10 centimeters, to ensure that the width and the height of a single crochet stitch are the same. If you want, you can always change the geometry of a single crochet stitch, but that's for another time. Now you can check, another way to check whether you've had enough stitches here is to do a two-dimensional rendering and then press the S key. And do you see how all the stitches are in gray now? Colored gray? That tells you that none of them are too stretched or too loose. Now if I have, let's say, 20 of these single crochet or 25 of these single crochet stitches, and I select the canvas here and I press S again, you're going to see the periphery is blue. This time the blue doesn't mean, oh, this is the direction in which you're going. It tells you that all the stitches are in blue are too loose. Do you guys see here? It says this edge here is stretched by -30%, meaning it's shrunk in the final model, so it's shorter than it should be, which means that stitch will be loose. Similarly, this red fella here, oops, let me select it, let me zoom in a little bit, or rather make the yarn thicker if you want, okay, is stretched by 30%, so it's too stretched. You see these vertical parts of the single crochet stitches are too overstretched, and that's because there are way too many of these single crochet stitches to go around. If there are too few, let's say there are 10 of them, it will be the other way around. And in fact, it already started folding in on itself. So let me try 12 of them. Okay, so I'm going to press S. You can see the periphery is colored in red here, which means these stitches are being stretched in the final model too much. So yeah, I need more of them. Let's say 15. Yeah, this is now colored in gray, so there is a little bit of redness here, it seems. So this should be more or less flat. Yeah, more or less. Let's do a little bit more, maybe 18. All right. Now, where do we go from here? Now that we've done our base ring, we can, let's say, do a chain. Okay. Maybe skip 3 stitches from between the single crochet stitches at the base, and do a single crochet. Okay, so that can form a petal right there, and I'm going to actually stick to 2D. Okay, now I want to repeat this pattern a few times, so I'm going to put in parentheses and multiply by, let's say, 5, and there we go. We went around the rope, around the loop, attaching 7 chains, skip 3 stitches, and then attaching those to a single crochet. Here you can see there is a little bit of an issue. The reason is all of these here, these stitches are, all of these petals of the flower have 7 chains and then a single crochet. In the beginning though, however, we have 1 chain and then 6 remaining here for this petal. So I'm gonna start a project with a single chain. So where is it? Right here. 1 chain and then 7 chains here for the petal. 1 single crochet, 7. Let me hide the label because that's annoying. 7 chains, 1 single crochet, 7 chains, 1 single crochet, 7 chains, 1 single crochet, 7 chains, but then there is a single crochet here in the end. So I want to convert this to a slip stitch because this length here is adding a little bit too much. You can actually see this petal is a little bit protruding outwards too much. So the last one of these I want to convert to a slip stitch. So one way to do it is I want to multiply this by 4. So 4 petals, and the last petal I want it to end with a slip stitch. There you go. Now it looks much more symmetric. Another way of achieving the same effect is to multiply by 5, but then interrupt this loop. So meaning these iterations. I'm iterating this part of the crochet code 5 times. You can say, well, on the last repeat, stop here. The symbol will make the repetition stop here, meaning that on the last repetition we're going to have 7 chains, 3 skips, and then we're going to do a slip stitch. Bam. Same exact picture here. And by the way, again, if you're worried about this, don't. I can just erase it. Whoa! Well, I guess I gotta be worried. Okay, so let me just briefly say, here, the code, I guess I got lucky in the beginning. The code runs a GraphViz engine to generate these patterns here. That engine uses, well, starts with a bunch of stitches, I'm going to use the crochet language, that are distributed at random. And when you run the code, it tries to move them around until all the distances between the stitches are, you know, what one might expect. So how you start those initial stitches before they're settled in their final positions is determined by this parameter. Okay, it's a random parameter. Again, just picture the stitches just tossed at random on the table, and then the code trying to move them around until all the lengths of the stitches are met. So by changing this starting seed, it's called, you can get different patterns. Okay, 3, 4, 5, and I guess 1 is the one that was a little bit messy. Okay, in 3D you wouldn't get this issue. Here it is in 3 dimensions. Okay, you always get more or less the same pattern. So in 3 dimensions, I'm actually going to get rid of this. There it is. All right, now what can you do after this? So let's move on because we don't have much time. I'm going to do a bunch of single crochets. So let's do, I don't know, 10 single crochets in the first chain. Okay, so now I want to be attaching these single crochets in the chain spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a label for my crochet space, for my chain spaces. Now this label, the way I wrote it down, is the same label for all the chain spaces. So in square brackets, I'm going to specify for which chain space it is. Now I'm going to use a little bit of a coding lingo. I want this to be an integer here in the parentheses, so I want it to be 0 for the first chain space, 1 for the next chain space, 2 for the next chain space, and so on. But I want to still, instead of copying this 5 times and writing this label by hand, I want the code to generate these integers, these whole numbers in parentheses automatically. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a variable k, which I'm going to initialize at 0 in the beginning. And now, when I repeat this chunk of instructions 5 times, this k will be replaced with 0 every single time. If you want, with every repetition, for it to increase by 1, this is what you do. You add plus plus. It's standard notation in coding. So on the first repetition, it will start at 0. Then on the next repetition, it will say A1, then A2, then A3. So what I want to do is I want to attach 10 single crochets in A0. And there they are. And maybe I want to do that 5 times, the number of the petals. Now if I do this, then all those 10 single crochets will try to fit on this first petal because here the index is 0. So what I want to do is I want to write again k++, and I want to initialize my k variable at 0, and voila. And maybe I want to do a slip stitch in the beginning of this line. So a percent automatically assumes we are going to be doing a slip stitch in this row or line or round. So in the first stitch of this line, and bam. Okay. Now, do you want to add some picots? Of course you can. To add some picots, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to define my picot stitch to be 3 chains and then a slip stitch, which is going to attach on this row 4 stitches back. So not the slip stitch, not the 3 chains. I want it to attach back to whatever the picot started from, to whatever the 3 chains started from. So that's the negative. The negative starts counting backwards. Now if I do this, I'm going to mess up my attachment points because, well actually, yeah, I will mess up my attachment points because this attachment is telling the single crochets where, this @ symbol tells the single crochets where to attach. They need to attach in the chain space labeled with AK++. So what I can do is I can use a different attachment head, like, which can be numbered. It can be any number here. You can do some random number if you want, which won't mess up my attachments, my attachment label here. Okay, let's try that. Okay, well, I didn't use the picot stitch anywhere, so this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put it right here. So I'm gonna do 3 single crochets, a picot stitch, 3 single crochets, a picot stitch, oops, and then maybe another 3 single crochets. Let's try that, and there they are. Okay, if you guys are confused about the attachment, different attachment heads, I'm gonna refer you to the manual. Search for attachment heads, and you can read about it here. All right, with that, I'm gonna end this tutorial. Take care, everybody.